Good evening, everyone. My name's Councillor Tony Cordy. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of Council. To start the official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and the unique role in the life of this region. Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. The Local Government Act, the Act, Part 12, Section 395 of the Act states that council meetings may be closed to the public during this prescribed period, which is 1st of May 2020 to 1st of November 2020, provided this live stream, the community have been provided means to submit statements or questions for council response. This is to ensure local government decision making can continue and remains transparent during the current coronavirus pandemic. Councillors and council staff are required to continue to act in accordance with the council's code of conduct and the council local government acts 1989 and 2020. Local laws and other acts and policies as prescribed. Where there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6 p.m. 17th of December 2020. Councillors, I have a recommendation. Do I have a mover, please? Moved, Councillor Henderson.
The Council closes the ordinary meeting of Council 15th of December 2020 under the Local Government Act 2020 Part 12 Section 295 and to note that where there are technical difficulties for being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6 p.m. 17th of December 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do I have a second, councillors? Councillor Amir. No objectors, so I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We have 6 councillors in the chamber and we have Councillor Gardner with us on Zoom. Thank you, Councillor Gardner. See you there.
Sorry to do that, but thank you for letting me do it.
That's not a problem. Apologies, leave of absence, nil. Declaration of interest and conflicts of interest, councillors. None at this stage. Thank you very much. Confirmation of minutes. Ordinary meeting of Council 24th of November 2020. The unconfirmed minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held at 6:30 on 24th November 2020 at the Mount Alexander Shire Civic Centre have been circulated to councillors. The unconfirmed minutes have also been posted on the Mount Alexander Shire Council website, pending confirmation at this meeting. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor McClure? The motion is?
I'd like to move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Mount Alexander Shire Council held on the 24th of November 2020 be confirmed.
Thanks, Councillor McClure. I've got a second, please. Councillor Maltby. Being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Okay. Section 5 of the agenda, acknowledgements, is nil this evening. We'll move on to section 6, which is public question time. I have one question from Alice Matheson, and it's a lengthy question. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to summarise the question, and there's three questions there, and it's in relation to the Farnsworth Street property. There's been a bit of discussion about that one. The question is, does the planning department take applications for minor works permits on a trust basis without checking for accuracy of detail of the provided information and without checking for heritage overlays? Second part of the question, is council aware that the properties south of the contested bill, being 35 Farnsworth and 1 Brown Street, are not on the heritage overlay and do not fall under the Heritage Act. Point 3, how will council revise its practices around heritage overlays and the checking of information on applications? This is an infrastructure question, and I'd refer that to our Director, Jess Howard. Jess, would you like to talk to this question, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and I thank Ms Matheson for her question. In relation to the matters that are raised, some of these things have been covered previously in correspondence with the residents in and around Farnsworth Street. So I referred to that, but in terms of the first question about does the planning department take applications for minor works permits? Minor works permits are actually assessed by the engineering team because they're about permission to do work in council road reserves. They're not a planning permit, they're a separate permitting process. So that's the process for minor works permits. In relation to the second question about the properties south of 37 Farnsworth Street not being under the heritage overlay, yes, we are aware of that. But again, the minor works permit process is about the road reserve, not necessarily the bounds of the heritage overlay. The third question was about how will council revise its practices around heritage overlays and the checking of information on applications. And again, on this one, council has, I've indicated in previous correspondence that the minor works permit process and the questions that have been raised by the community in relation to 37 Farnsworth Street have led to us having a look at whether there are any improvements that we could make to our process, whether there's any additional things that we aren't doing that might be nice to do and might also reflect better the expectation that exists. So we are looking at modifying our minor works permit process so that we formalise the internal referral where there is a planning overlay identified in particular, or either another sort of sensitive land use. And this will just give everyone comfort that if one of those matters is there, it's considered, and if an additional planning permit is also needed, that's identified as well. So it's not relevant in this matter, but it is something where we've said we're happy to always look at ways that we can improve, and we're working to get that practice put in place as soon as possible.
Thanks for that, Director Howard. That's a comprehensive response. Okay, that concludes public question time for this evening. Items 7 and 8, petitions and letters and committee reports is nil to report. Officer reports 9.1.1, annual plan progress report. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to note the council notes the annual plan progress report 2020-2021 quarter 1.
Thanks for that. I've got a second, councillors. Councillor Driscoll, any opposition? Being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. Thank you very much.
Oh, Mayor, I'd like to speak briefly to this officer report, if you don't mind, just to draw attention to my fellow councillors, some of whom would, this is a new item for them, having just arrived on council, and also for any members of the public that might be interested in how council is progressing. Of course, the first item, and I noticed in this night, with us, Director Knight, will be very happy to tick off the fact that at last, the off-lead dog park, the first item in our annual report, has been completed. And as I drove past this evening, I think I even saw a couple of happy dogs and their owners enjoying the facility. So it's terrific we managed to make one, and I know we need another one, but we'll take a bit of a rest after the phenomenal effort it took to finally locate one within our Casimo township. In addition to that, we've got a bushfire risk and community engagement toolkit being developed, and that's coming along. A very important part of our emergency management team, as well as managing volunteers during emergencies. So, of course, a new emergency arose, which was the pandemic, and dealing with volunteers during that time requires very special consideration. So that's an additional bit of work that has to be done by our emergency management in that case. We have important things being ticked off. I noticed that the Frederick Street streetscape project is moving ahead, and I think councillors are aware that there might be a bit of public consultation happening on that. I was very pleased to see that the white, green and red markings all over the roads have been tastefully painted out by our officers, I take it, so they're no longer a significant feature of the walkways there. That's good. Botanic Gardens, implementing the conservation management plan, and I see that there will be a nearing completion of a draft tree succession plan. Very important with all our beautiful but very mature trees, some of whom are nearing the end of their natural life. So we will have to replace them. Planning scheme work is going ahead well. We've got 2 major bits of planning work that's it's just now going through the formal process of being ticked off by the minister, such as the Plan High Court being passed by council and will eventually become a planning amendment, and also the moral and design guidelines also will be incorporated into our planning scheme. So it's terrific we had that work done during the last quarter, completed anyway, and the Moreland streetscapes have begun. The work to put the power underground, that's actually started. Meanwhile, the Stanley Park North playground space is completed, and a very happy place that is too for a lot of our younger members of the community. So that's terrific to see. And just noting at the end, sort of bookending with the Oakley Dog Park, we're expecting something which we haven't had before, which is, I'm trying to find it, an order of council for the control of animals in public places. So councillors, I think we can expect a report on that coming to us soon, and we will have to consider it as to what to do with our domestic pets in the Shire. So lots of work being done by our organisation, and I commend the report to my fellow councillors and the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Would anyone else like to speak on the progress report? Thank you very much for that. It's a great report, and there's a lot being achieved, so well done all. We'll move on to 9.1.2, community grants recommendation. Councillor, do I have a motion there, please? Councillor Henderson.
Yes, but I'll try not to completely hog the meeting, but I would like to move here that council adopts the recommendations in this report for funding of round 2, the 2020 community grants program, with the addition of the project entitled Community Assets, a Shared Space, which is a shared project between Casimo Theatre Company, Three's a Crowd, and Rotary, for a total allocation of 54,588.
I understand there may be a conflict of interest there, Councillor Henderson. Councillor McClure.
Yes, having been a member of Rotary, I have to remove myself from this discussion today. Thank you.
So if you could leave while we deal with this matter, thanks, Councillor McClure. Please continue, Councillor Henderson.
Okay, so I guess I should just reiterate, the council adopt the recommendations as in the report, with the addition of the project entitled Community Assets Shared Space, for a total allocation of $54,588, the balance of $4,588, which is not allocated in our budget, to come from general revenue.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Driscoll? Is there any opposition to the motion? Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
I will very briefly, thank you, Mayor. Just that this is an excellent report. It is allocating community grants around the much deserved community groups of many different areas of work in the community across the Shire. It's terrific. And I would like to see that the Casimo Theatre Company is included. With some doubt as to whether they report with their application was complete enough, but I think in the circumstances with the year that everyone's had, and certainly our creative performers had a very hard year of it, and I think with the quality over a sustained period of the productions that company and Three's a Crowd have given us. Last year we had Bright Star, which was a stupendous performance in the Big Broadway Theatre. It sold out for I think a week. We've had Monkey and the Monk from the Casimo Theatre Company. We've had As You Like It in recent times. The list goes on, and in fact the history of amateur theatre in Castlemaine goes back, I believe. I think the earliest references is 1856, so it's a long held tradition in this town, this creative town, to have amateur theatre, and I think we should be supporting this in advance. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. There being no opposition, I declare the matter carried, and yes, I'm very happy to see the theatre group get some funding because they're a fantastic group. So it's Three's a Crowd as an organisation. So well done. So we'll get Councillor McClure back now. Thank you. Thanks for that, Councillor McClure. In terms of the agenda, we'll move on to 9.2.1, planning application PA 012/2020, 83 to 85 Blakely Road, Castlemaine. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Anea.
Thank you, Ma'am. I would like to move an alternative motion to the recommendation, please. That the council issue a notice of refusal for the use and development of the land for a place of worship and associated car park, 2-lot subdivision, removal of native vegetation, and the reduction of car parking requirements on the following grounds. 1. The scale of the use and development of the place of worship is out of character within the context of the site and surrounds and would pose detrimental amenity impacts to the residential properties within the surrounding area. 2. The proposed operating hours are inappropriate within the context of the site and surrounds based on their early and late nature and would impact on the amenity of surrounding residential properties. 3. The proposed built form of the proposed place of worship does not represent a good urban design outcome due to the structure's lack of street integration and visual interest due to its location at the rear of the site and bulky design. Therefore, the proposal is inconsistent with clause 15.01-2S, which requires built form to respond and contribute to the context of the surround area and minimise detrimental impacts on neighbouring properties, the public realm and natural environment. 4. The location of the proposed car park to the front of the building will result in detrimental visual bulking and restrict the ability to provide sufficient landscape buffers. Therefore, the proposed car park does not meet the requirements of clause 18.02-4S, which seeks to ensure that car parking areas achieve a high standard of urban design and protect the amenity of the surrounding area. 5. The proposal reduction of car parking requirements does not represent an orderly planning outcome pursuant to clause 52.06-10 and clause 18.02-4S due to an inadequate supply of car parking in the context of the expected patron numbers. 6. The proposal has not adequately addressed traffic issues associated with the proposal and would impact on the amenity of the locality due to increased noise, light spill and disturbance to dwellings pursuant to clause 52.06-10. 7. Traffic safety along Blakely Road and Sawmill Road has not been addressed by the application, and the expected traffic generation would detrimentally impact on the roll-on function of the surrounding road network through road congestion associated with the proposed car parking area pursuant to clause 52.06-10 and clause 18.02-4S. 8. And this is the last one. The application does not include the implementation of any measures to address the identified bushfire risk associated with the site pursuant to clause 13.02-1S.
Thanks for that motion, councillor Anir. Have I got a seconder? Yes,
Second it, Mayor.
I can see councillor Gardner there, seconder.
Yeah.
Councillors, is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Maltby? That's fine, we'll deal with that now. So we will have the debate. So councillor Anir, would you like to talk to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. In the last 2 days alone, I and many other councillors have received an inundation of objections. I counted 58 in the last 2 days alone, with concerns surrounding size, scale and capacity of the proposed development, environmental and wildlife concerns, traffic concerns, energy impacts, the size and location of the proposed car park, increased risk to pedestrians and cyclists, light spill, and emergency access and bushfire risk concerns. In my opinion, the size, scale and capacity exceeds the purpose of the low-density residential zone and will significantly affect the rural residential character of the area. Also, the increased traffic along Great Blakely Road and particularly on Sawmill Road and Damascus Lane will lead to increased traffic hazards in an area frequented by pedestrians and cyclists. I don't object to church being built, and I respect the right of everyone to have a place of worship, but I don't think this is the right place for this proposed building to be built. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Anir. Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak or?
Yes, just quickly.
Yep.
I think as Rosie had said, we've been inundated with emails. I did want to make a point though, there was a lot of them who I felt were just anti-Brethren. And I want to make the point that in my consideration of this application, it's not relevant. So some of the statements actually, and I did have a conversation with someone, I found quite offensive and no place. And they certainly aren't relevant in terms of looking at this application. For me, and Rosie's probably summed them up quite well, the residential amenity, there's a large car park with about 138 spaces, 400 parishioners, and up to 1,000 for an annual event, and there will be meetings at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. It is in a residential zone, and this is a very large scale building, and it doesn't fit in surrounds. Having noted that the hot rods, but they're sort of further up on the corner, and the church as well, whereas this will be built directly opposite current housing. And the wildlife collar was mentioned. I think also that issues around traffic will become a big problem, as there is going to be quite a big traffic. And they're my reasons for supporting this notice of refusal.
Thanks for that, councillor Gardner. Councillor Maltby, would you like to speak to it now, please?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Speaking to the motion, I acknowledge and note all the objections to this application, but it actually saddens me, and what Councillor Gardner just said is a pertinent point. Many of those objections have attacked the religious views and practices of the applicant. This is a planning matter, not a moral matter. It's a planning matter, and quite seriously, as Rosie says, people are allowed to practice religion and have a place of worship. If we deal with the planning issue, the building is too big and there is traffic issues. But quite seriously, I thought we lived in a democratic society, and some of those objections were abhorrent. I will signal that I will be asking the Director of Infrastructure to look at the use of Sawmill Road Bridge, because if anything, this application has highlighted major traffic issues in that area.
Thanks for that, councillor Maltby. Are there any other councillors wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Henderson.
No, to miss a chance to speak, Mayor. I support what everyone said, really, and I acknowledge Councillor Maltby's note of inappropriate statements in some of the objectives. I have to say that the majority that I read followed a similar pattern of saying this is an inappropriate development in a low density residential zone, the scale of the building. And I think that's really what has come home to me, that we have a place of worship not far away on the other side of the road. I think it holds 300 people. I've certainly been in it for various community meetings, and it's quite large. It has a sizable car park, but it's all right. The hot rods, I understand, were built there well before our current planning scheme was in place, and they would definitely not get permission to build that current facility, that facility under the current planning scheme. It would be absolutely an inappropriate, it would be a non-permitted use of the zone under the current planning regulations. However, it was approved many years ago. So they are there, and obviously they're not going to get chased away. But the rest of it is very precious. A zone, the low density residential. We don't have it in any of our small towns. There are many people who seek and in many cases get permission to build on farmland, but that is in many ways contrary to the purpose of that zone. And we councillors frequently face issues of granting permission for something to be built in a small lot in the farm zone, and we're reminded that is not really the right thing to do. Here we have a zone which is specifically set aside for people to live in homes, in dwellings, on larger lots of 5, 10 acres. Sorry about the old measuring. But that's what it is. It's residential. And to have a building that would accommodate close to 1,000 people, it's just completely beyond the scale of anything in that zone. And I don't think it's just not appropriate. As well as the bushfire risk, the building has been sited on the block to be out of the bushfire management overlay, but very close by, it is on the other parts of the same site, there is a bushfire management overlay, and it is in a high risk area for bushfire, and certainly the road, Blakely Road, is a narrow road. It does not have any formed edges to it, it does not have footpaths, it carries a modicum of vehicular traffic, of bikes, of walkers, and yes, to bring in another 400 people, another 200 cars, whatever, on a regular basis, several times a week, would just be a big impact, far beyond the appropriate use of that zone. So thank you. That's my opinion.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. I think what we'll do is we'll have a vote. All those in favour of Councillor Anita's motion, declare the matter carried.
Can I call for a division, please?
Well, it's actually no division, Mayor. It's
Can that be noted, please?
Councillor Henderson.
Can that be noted in the minutes,
unanimous.
please, mate?
Yep, no problem.
Well, otherwise it's not noted in the minutes.
We move on to 9.2.2, and it's use and development of a renewable energy facility, solar farm and energy storage and utility installation, removal of native vegetation and business identification signage at 333 Hawkins Road, Ravenswood South. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Maltby.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that the council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of a renewable energy facility, solar farm and energy store, utility installation, removal of native vegetation and business identification signage at 333 Opens Road and Reeds Lane, Ravenswood South, subject to the conditions printed.
Thanks for that, councillor Maltby. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McClure. Do I have any objection? Councillor Maltby, would you like to talk to your motion, please?
Thanks. Excuse me. Solar farms are a very important part of the world as we move forward addressing climate concerns. So whether it is taking away some good farmland at the minute, unfortunately that's going to happen wherever we go. And this is a good application and it's worthy of continuing down the process.
Thanks for that, councillor Maltby. Councillor McClure, would you like to talk? Was the seconder?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I did look at this seriously. I understand there is a balancing exercise between the use of the land for farming and the use of the land for solar facilities, but I think moving forward with our issues with climate change, it's not much of a decision to say that one far outweighs the other, in my view. So that's why I support this position at this point in time. It is important that we address our issues with climate change, and these sort of facilities are going to be used and sought much more in our community moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks for that, councillor McClure. Would anyone else like to speak on the issue? Councillor Henderson.
Very quickly, just to, this is a substantial report. It is an extensive report, not only the conditions drawn which protect surrounding views and make sure that the place is built according to all the requirements and regulations, but the report itself makes substantial reading, and I just want to congratulate the planners for their work. This could have been sent direct to the minister, I believe, under the current regulations, and we could have handed it to the Minister for Planning to determine, but I think our planning department decided they'd like to do it themselves, and I just want to congratulate them on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, councillor Henderson. Councillor Gardner, would you like to talk to the issue?
Yes, briefly. I obviously am supportive of it, and I believe in the science of climate change. It does concern me, though. There's still, to me, an unanswered question about the tension between solar installations and the use of farmland. And I think it hasn't been answered. Now we're going to have one in Barrier, which is using what I would consider to be prime farmland. And then we have this one. So to me, it's still an unanswered question. But having said that, this is a big facility. It'll be good for the Shire. It's going to create 200 jobs during construction and many during ongoing. The closest neighbour to this facility, I think, was 1.3 kilometres. We did hear from the objectors. Most of the issues raised were things around noise, EMI, those sorts of standards. They're already being tested and they're fine. And I think, as Christine said, that there was a lot of work put in this. There's a cultural heritage plan. There's a wildlife management plan. There's lots of plans with it. So, yeah, I'd just like to support it. It'll be a good facility for our region.
Thanks for that, councillor Gardner. I'd just like to comment. I'm a farmer, and I've farmed not far away from this proposal for over 30 years. And I know from my experience that between Harcourt and Bendigo, there's probably 5 what I call viable farms of this type. And so it is very significant for our community. I know there's a lot of support from the community for investment in these technologies, but it is a concern to me in terms of the taking out a large chunk of agricultural production. And if you extrapolate it further to make a substantial impact on the amount of electricity that our state uses, there's got to be 100 farms go under glass and aluminium solar panels. So 100 farms, this is just one we're talking about here, but 100 farms is very significant, and that concerns me. Councillors, I'm not hearing any opposition to this project. So in view of that, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. There's a lot of conditions. Good luck with that. Okay, councillors, we'll move on to 9.2.3, planning application PA 011-2020, 3 Watson Street, Casimo. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor McClure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for lot 11, for an 11 lot subdivision, 3 Watson Street, Casimo, subject to the conditions outlined in the notice.
Thanks for that, Councillor McClure. Have I got a second, please? Councillor Driscoll, is there any opposition? Can't see a lot of opposition, but Councillor McClure, would you like to talk to the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We did have a meeting with the objectors and took on board some of their points in regards to the 11 lot subdivision. I think it's reasonable. There are some smaller lots granted in this proposal, but I know council does have a philosophy moving forward that we look at providing affordable land and smaller lots in our subdivision, and this type of development goes some way to meeting some housing lots that are cheaper and smaller for people, so people can afford them. I think all the provisions that are outlaid in the proposal meet some of the objections that have been raised, and I'm satisfied that should be built, it'll be okay for the area. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor McClure. Councillor Driscoll, a second, or would you like to make any comment?
I think it's a good application and helps us get some more houses to be built in our shire. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. Would anyone else like to comment on this one? Being no further comment and no objections, I declare the matter carried. We'll move on to 9.3, our economy. 9.3.1, annual report 2019-2020. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Anir.
I motion that council adopts the 2019-2020 annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Anir. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Any objections? No objections? Councillor Anir, would you like to talk to the motion? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as a new councillor coming in after this year, it was really fantastic to have this document put in front of me, which had 162 pages that I could read and see what council has been up to for the last year. It gave me a really great insight to the things we've accomplished over what was, a relatively difficult year, and also gave me some ideas about what the year ahead might look like for us. So thank you very much for the people who put it together. I thought it was fantastic.
Thanks for that, Councillor Anir. Councillor Henderson, would you like to talk to the annual report?
I just have to say that I'm in awe of my fellow councillor, Councillor Anir, that she has actually read the annual report. I think it took me at least 3 years before I got round to reading an annual report, and then discovered there's a lot of information in it. It's a great summary of so what the year has unfolded, the performance of council in the financial year. I would take note that our people includes a fantastic photograph of some of our depot staff, which underneath it says executive team. So I'm glad to see that we're a very democratic based organisation where in fact the road crew can take over the executive management of the organisation sometimes. But anyway, that's just a little humorous aspect. There's some great photographs in this, and I can remember for a few years the same photographs used to get recycled, so it's terrific that we have got some great photographs, and I can commend the document to people just looking at the photographs. But apart from that, there's some, and of course the best photos on the front with me on it, of course. But this is just a great summary of what Council's been up to. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Would any other councillors like to comment on the report? Councillor Driscoll.
Apart from the nice photos, it also includes the audited annual financial statements and performance of the council. It has a snapshot as of the 15th of September 2020, if anyone's interested in the numbers rather than the pictures.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. I actually was studying the financial report myself in my preparation for this meeting, and it gives me great pleasure to be mayor of a council that is well managed and in a very sustainable financial position. So I think it's a great report. Any other councillors wishing to comment before we move on? Okay, being no opposition, I declare the report carried. Thank you very much. Uh, 9.3.2, schedule of meetings for 2021. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Driscoll.
The council adopts the following times, dates and location as the schedule for meetings of the council in 2021 as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. I have a seconder, Councillor Maltby. Any objections? Councillor Driscoll, would you like to talk to this one or set them up? Okay, there being no objection to our meeting schedule for the next 12 months, I declare the matter carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, 9.3.3, appointment of councillors as representatives to committees. Councillors, do I have a recommendation? I have a motion, please. Councillor McClure.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that council appoints Mayor Alexander Shire County representatives to committees as recommended in Table 1, external committees and internal committees, and notes the opportunity to attend meetings of the Community Assets Committee as shown in Table 2, and notes the committees will be formally advised of their representative and details of the appointments that will be made available on the council website.
Thanks very much for that. Have I got a seconder for that one? Councillor O'Neill, thank you very much. Any objections, councillors? If you'd like to speak to the motion, Councillor Maltby, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Maybe the CEO could explain what a community asset committee is rather than what used to be an old Section 86 committee.
Okay, we'll refer to our CEO and he can just give us a little explanation on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. For most intents and purposes, Councillor Maltby, they are very much the same thing. The community asset committees is as a result, they've been enacted that as a result of the change in the Local Government Act that was adopted earlier this year. But functionally, they are the same thing. So all of the conditions that existed for all of your Section 86 committees have been carried across into the community asset committees. It doesn't mean that has to stay that way, but they have been translated across so that there is no change in the experience of the committees as part of translating across to the new requirements of the Local Government Act.
Thanks very much for that, CEO. Councillor Henderson.
I'm just wondering who moved this. Is it Councillor O'Neill?
Councillor McClure.
Speaking to it?
I don't think there's, I could speak to it, but I don't think there's much to speak to. It's as documented, and I'm looking forward to actually joining a couple of the other asset community, asset for communities. I've sort of an interest in the Campbellsford Recreation Reserve and what happens in that facility. And so I'll be looking forward to taking part in the discussions on those in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McClure. Does anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Nine point 3.4 Audit and Risk Advisory Committee meeting, 26th of November 2020. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Anea.
I move that council notes the summary report and minutes of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee meeting held on 26th of November 2020.
Thank you for that. Have I got a seconder, please? Councillor Driscoll. Any objections? Would you like to talk to the Audit and Risk Committee motion, Councillor Anea?
I went to this meeting. I won't always be sitting on the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee, but I decided to go to one to see what it was like. It was long, and I probably only understood about half of what was said, but what I did understand was fascinating, and I particularly loved learning about risk appetite, of which I am told I have a very high risk appetite. So that can bode both good and bad, but it was fascinating, and I look forward to popping in again in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Anea. I'm sure your contribution was well received by the committee. Does anyone else wish to speak on Audit and Risk Committee? Councillor Driscoll.
I'd just like to thank my fellow councillors as I'm the representative on the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Nine point 3.5 Finance Report. Sorry, 9.3.5 Finance Report, September 2020. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Maltby.
I'll move the council notes the finance report for the 3-month period to 30th September 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Maltby. Do I have a seconder, councillors? Councillor Henderson. No objection. Councillor Maltby, would you like to talk to the finance report?
I only agree with your comments, Mr. Mayor, that the Shire is in a very good financial state.
Thanks very much. Does anyone else wish to talk to the financial report? Councillor Henderson.
I guess that always of note is a concern is the fact that our capital works program is lagging behind expectation, but we know that there's lots of stuff on order, and of course COVID-19 has a big impact on the ability to actually get things going. So not too concerning in this. The modern works, they have a big influence on the capital works future, of course, so we look forward to them progressing in a expedient manner. And also, less than 50% of our investments are currently in divested institutions. I don't know whether that's a downward trend. Not that investments of the kind that we can make are particularly rewarding at the moment. So probably, I don't know if Director Knight wishes to comment on that.
Happy to talk to that. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. There's been significant review undertaken during COVID because some of the investments and the duration of those investments have had to be reviewed because during COVID and with the interest rates that we're currently receiving being very poor, that is ongoing and we're looking at all of that, and there has been a drop in some of the ratings of the financial institutions in recent months as well. So that's something that the team are watching eagerly and constantly reviewing.
Thank you, Ms. Knight.
Thanks very much for that advice, Director Knight. Okay, there being no objection, I declare the finance report carried. We'll move on to delegates' reports. Councillors. Councillor Neil, will let Councillor Neil go first.
I went to my first meeting as a council delegate on Friday, and it was for the Goldfields Library Corporation Board's AGM. I went with Director Knight, and it was great. I had an awesome time. I love libraries, so I'm very pleased to be there. I put my hand up to be Deputy Chair, so I'm now Deputy Chair under Councillor Rod Fife from City of Greater Bendigo, and I'm excited about learning more about that as well. It was a really fantastic meeting. I learned a lot about the ins and outs of the library, which I haven't known before, especially how well our library system is doing comparatively to some other libraries, and how much we've accomplished in the last few years to kind of rise up the ranks of libraries, especially in regard to e-resources and online activities. So it was great. I love libraries. Thank you for letting me be part of that board.
Well done, Councillor. And yeah, CEO, you're keen to give a report, I think. Oh, Councillor Henderson's going to go first.
Well, I'll actually steal your thunder and finish the last one on your report, Ms. and the Mayor, because today in Taradale we unveiled a sculpture, and I think my fellow councillor Maltby advised that the previous one that was publicly funded, the last one I think was in 1999, the Little Digger statue on the roundabout at the corner of Hargrave and Forest Street there, so intersection. So it was a great day in Taradale. The subject of the sculpture is to commemorate the achievement of our local heroes, John and Mark Conlon, brothers, the shearers. They were champion shearers, I think in the 1970s. I think I might be able to help me there. Australian champions and world champions, and shore a kind of phenomenal number of sheep and only stopped because they ran out of sheep, was the story. They'd already attained the world record. So Taradale's long held desire to commemorate this achievement, and the Conlon brothers who were born and grew up in the town of Taradale. And today, funded by council, as part of our monies which have been held over from the development of the master plan, the Taradale Mineral Springs, we actually unveiled the sculpture, and the Mayor and the CEO were both there, as well as a considerable contingent of the Conlon family. And it was a great morning, and I'd like to congratulate our Cultural Development Officer, Vicky Anderson, on her part in organising it. It's very hard to commission a sculpture and actually get it in place on the ground and tick all the right boxes. And so it was truly great for the community and for council. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. All I can say is it was a great event to be there, and I thought the park there at Taradale was a credit to the community. It's a beautiful park, fabulous playground, and it just demonstrates what a great advocate you've been for that community over the time you've been on council. So well done. Now I'll hand over to the CEO for his report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Councillors, you have got the summary of what the Mayor and I have been up to over the last month, and I'll just happy to answer questions as always on any of the items there, but I'll just pick up on a couple, if I may. The meeting with the Casimo Police Station Commander, that's something that we do reasonably often, just to keep in touch about what's going on in the community, where we might be able to help each other. The feedback there was serious crime is low here, and we know that, and it continues to be low, so that's good news. What was not such good news was that there's been a significant increase in motor vehicle accidents in our region in recent times, and the police are very concerned about that, obviously, and we should all be. So let's hope everybody can just slow down and take a little bit more care than perhaps what we have been collectively in recent times. The one I wanted to mention, the initiative I wanted to mention there, though, and I think that the three councillors quite familiar with this initiative, was a graffiti clean-up initiative, which is one between the police. The council is also involved in that in part, but a real partnership between the police and the Rotary Club, where the Rotary Club is offering the muscle to do the work to clean up graffiti as hopefully as quickly as it turns up, so that we can really get on top of that and be clear that that's not something that's okay in our community, because it does from time to time have a bit of a spike, and we're seeing that at the moment, unfortunately. So terrific to see the police and Rotary doing that initiative together. The other one I was going to mention was the Newstead Cultural Precinct Roundtable, which Councillor Driscoll attended also, along with Councillor Howard, Councillor Howard, that's old days, Director Howard, and also David Leatham, the Manager of Economy and Culture, as well as Vicky Anderson was there too, working with the Newstead community on their ideas for increasing the cultural precinct, which is in and around the former railway station, which council supported that group in developing many years ago. So we have the head lease for the railway station, and they have a sublease and operate the precinct there. It was really, and as it happens, just a few days beforehand, we learned that the state government had funded the upgrade of the goods shed, which is over the other side of the railway line in Newstead. So that was terrific news for the group to hear that. That's going to be a very important development for them. But this was going beyond that and saying, what about the land around that? What's the opportunity to really develop a significant cultural precinct physically within Newstead, which, as we all know, is a cultural precinct in its own right, along with the rest of this shire. So it was an exciting discussion. We spent a good 4 hours or so talking about what might be possible, and I can just about guarantee, councillors, that you'll have a delegation come from the Newstead committee at some stage talking to you about what they'd really like to achieve with our help. That's it for me, Ben.
Thanks for that, CEO. Councillors, any further delegates' reports? Councillor Driscoll.
Just to say that I along with Rosie last night with the Casimo Health AGM. They ran the show pretty well. The good complex there, it's fantastic.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll.
Sorry, Councillor Driscoll, can you tell me more about this? You were, I didn't quite understand what you're talking about.
The Casimo Health, it's up on the hill.
Yeah.
I had their AGM last night.
Oh, thank you, pardon me, AGM.
Thanks for that. Any other councillors with delegates' reports? Councillor Neer wants another go, so we'll have another go.
Sorry, I forgot a couple. I'm just very excited, going to lots of things. Like, as Matt said, we both went to the Casimo Health AGM last night, and that was really, really well done, actually. I liked how they did it. They did it so you couldn't see all the participants. It was very nice just to be presented to. I also, on the weekend, had the opportunity to go to the Casimo Jazz Festival AGM and perform the role of returning officer, which was very exciting. And although they were disappointed that the Jazz Festival couldn't go ahead this year, they're very excited about what's going to happen in this coming year. They also found out that I'm not a big fan of jazz, but you know, they did some digging, and unfortunately I had said on the internet that I hated jazz, so that came back to bite me. Also, at the end of November, I went along to the launch of Mount Alexander Cycling, which is a really exciting new initiative, I think, which kind of combines all the existing cycling clubs together to kind of unite a little bit and to advocate for cycling within the Shire and you know, more bike paths and more community awareness. And as somebody who is still quite scared of cycling, having fallen off my bike as a teenager, they embraced me and said that they would get me back on my bike. So hopefully that occurs. And finally, I went along last week to the drop-in session for the Norbert Hill Reserve Master Plan. And I just wanted to especially say something about this because I was so impressed with the amount of community members who came along to that drop-in session. It was really impressive. I think I was there for the 2 hours, along with the council officers and the consultants and all the plans on the tables. And in that time, I would say about 60 people came, lots of them with their children, and they were all very positive, they were all very respectful, and they were all just so excited that council was upgrading that space, which, you know, is a really beautiful space, but could obviously be better. But it was just so encouraging to see so many of the community come along and really talk about what they wanted. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks for that, councillor Mayor. I just mentioned that I went out to the Campbell's Creek Reserve drop-in session, and there was some interest from the community, but the staff were doing a great job out there, so it was good to see. And certainly that facility is there's a huge opportunity there for development. So we'll see what happens in the budget process going forward. Okay, so I think that concludes delegates' reports. Being no notice of motion or urgent special business or confidential items, I'll declare the meeting closed. 7:30. Thank you very much.